As the setting transitions to a solemn temple, the atmosphere becomes charged with Earl Varen's palpable rage upon catching sight of his bruised visage, a consequence of the recent altercation with Joshua. Seething with indignation, Earl Varen confides in Muku, expressing a profound dissatisfaction that even a thorough thrashing of Joshua would fail to assuage. With an air of command, Earl Varen demands that Muku immediately procure Joshua's presence. However, Muku, grappling with his own doubts, hesitates, admitting his lack of prowess for such a task. Enraged by Muku's apparent incompetence, Earl Varen lashes out, his anger manifesting in a swift kick directed at Muku, punctuating his disdain for the inability to subdue a seemingly feeble adversary like Joshua, who bears the semblance of a mere child. In a tone dripping with contempt, he challenges Muku's reasoning and issues a stern warning of impending punishment upon their return home. Reluctantly, Muku acquiesces to Varen's demands, though the weight of their implications hangs heavily upon him. Earl Varen, undeterred by Muku's reservations, orders him to meticulously gather intelligence on Joshua Frederick, down to the minutiae of his familial connections and household staff, hinting at a calculated scheme of revenge to be executed with precision. Yet, Muku, though acknowledging the enormity of the task, voices his protest against the lack of justification for such vindictive measures, only to be met with Earl Varen's unyielding resolve. Earl Varen, standing firm in his authority as the successor to the esteemed Marquis of House Villas, adamantly brushes aside Muku's qualms, asserting his prerogative to act without justification in the face of such blatant disrespect. With a tone of conviction, he challenges Muku's dissent, prompting him to ponder whether Muku truly finds his reaction unjustified. Muku, however, counters Earl Varen's confidence with a pragmatic concern, expressing skepticism that anyone would believe such a serious offense could be committed by a child scarcely 10 years of age. Moreover, Muku paints a stark picture of the potential consequences, warning Earl Varen that even if his accusations were to gain traction, the tarnishing of House Villa's esteemed reputation could have far-reaching repercussions, altering the very fabric of public perception surrounding the noble household. Earl Varen, his frustration mounting, swiftly dismisses Muku's objections, demanding compliance and an end to what he perceives as baseless objections. Yet, Muku, in a rare display of defiance, raises his voice, passionately asserting that his words are far from nonsensical. Rather, they echo the deeply ingrained values of nobility, where honor often holds precedence over even one's own life. And the honor of House Villas is tantamount to the very essence of the household itself. Muku's warning carries a weighty undertone as he cautions Earl Varen that even if they evade the scrutiny of authorities, the discerning eye of the Marquis of House Villas would not be so easily swayed. And the repercussions for their actions could extend far beyond a mere slap on the wrist, plunging them into the depths of severe retribution. Upon processing Muku's cautionary words, Earl Varen swiftly formulates a strategy, recognizing the urgency of acting before any damaging rumors can circulate. He proposes the erasure of evidence, confident in their ability to mitigate the situation. Earl Varen subtly insinuates Muku's apprehension, referencing a past incident involving House Rubrica, hinting at the consequences of an action driven by fear. Muku, however, counters with a revelation, the existence of tangible evidence. He discloses that Ashur Vin Frederick has in his possession the Varen family token, a statement that jolts Earl Varen with surprise. Hastily, Earl Varen checks his pocket, only to be met with a chilling realization: the token is missing, replaced by a palpable sense of shock. Muku elucidates further, explaining Ashur Vin Frederick's conditions for its return, hinting at a looming confrontation. Muku, acutely aware of the repercussions, reflects on the significance of the token's theft, recognizing its detrimental impact on the revered reputation of House Villas. Despite considering Ashur Frederick's motives, Muku cannot dismiss the slim possibility of intentional sabotage, prompting further concern and deliberation. Deep in thought, Muku grapples with the implications of having someone as formidable as Ashur Vin Frederick as an adversary to the Villas family. Recognizing the stakes at play, Muku voices his concerns to Earl Varen, underscoring the precarious balance of risks and rewards in their current situation. With a sense of caution, Muku proposes to Earl Varen the wisdom of quelling his anger and adopting a more observant stance for the time being. Earl Varen, visibly frustrated by Muku's suggestion, challenges him on whether he expects Varen to extend an apology to Frederick. Muku clarifies that while Frederick demands a direct confrontation, Muku intends to delegate the task to a substitute for the time being. Transitioning to a different scene, Joshua and Cain find themselves in a bustling restaurant, engaged in conversation. Cain probes Joshua's confidence in Earl Varen's willingness to personally reclaim the Villa's family token. Joshua, with a hint of skepticism, suggests that Earl Varen would hesitate to confront him directly over such a valuable possession. Instead, Joshua surmises that Earl Varen will likely opt for a more discreet approach, entrusting a loyal surrogate to handle the exchange, thereby safeguarding sensitive information from potential leaks. Cain, intrigued, muses aloud about the mysterious substitute's identity, prompting Joshua to delve into a fascinating rumor circulating in Acadie. He shares tales of accent probellum, reputed to hold sway over the night in the city, but Joshua reveals a deeper truth. It is the young master of House Villas who truly commands the darkness. Cain, struck by this revelation, reassesses his previous perception of Joshua's motivations, realizing that Joshua's actions weren't merely impulsive reactions to a noble heir, but rather calculated moves towards a grander ambition. In Joshua, Cain sees the potential for greatness far surpassing his initial expectations. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Iceland, who expresses heartfelt gratitude to Joshua for his recent aid. Joshua, modest yet resolute, downplays his role, explaining that his actions were driven not solely by altruism but by broader considerations. Iceland, acknowledging the depth of Joshua's impact, reflects on how his intervention spared not only her but also her family from the wrath of Earl Varen. Grateful for Joshua's intervention, Iceland offers her thanks once more. When Joshua heard this, he thought Isley would become a powerful mage in the future who would make a name for herself across the continent. Iceland seemed very different when she was younger, and Joshua wondered how she changed from being shy to becoming a ruthless killer. In Joshua's recollection of his previous life, Iceland was revered as the Ice Archmage, a figure of ethereal beauty amidst the frosty darkness, her icy magic reflecting both her elegance and aloofness. Reflecting on her past epithet, Joshua finds it aptly descriptive of Iceland's current demeanor. Breaking the contemplative silence, Iceland reassures Joshua that should he find himself in trouble following the day's events, she and her father will readily come to his aid. Joshua, however, dismisses her concerns, insisting that such gestures are unnecessary. Yet, Iceland, feeling indebted for Joshua's assistance, hesitates to let go of her sense of obligation towards him, believing it unjust to ignore his potential future troubles. Sensing her lingering worry, Joshua proposes a solution. Should Iceland remain genuinely concerned, she can grant him a single request in the future as a token of repayment. Iceland's face lights up with gratitude at the suggestion, eagerly pledging to be there for Joshua whenever he requires her assistance. As Joshua's gaze drifts out the window, he catches sight of something intriguing, a faint smirk playing upon his lips as he observes whatever has captured his attention. The scene unfolds with someone agilely navigating the rooftops, soon revealed to be Zero. Startled by Joshua's apparent awareness of Zero's surveillance, Zero grapples with disbelief, considering Joshua's remarkable perceptiveness. Despite Zero's confidence in remaining undetected even by a master, Joshua's acute awareness and the accuracy of the information he possesses compels Zero to reassess the situation. Initially assuming that Joshua had merely stumbled upon the existence of the Moon's Door and sought to exploit it against Zero. The realization that Joshua may possess more detailed knowledge prompts Zero to contemplate the potential ramifications for their master's decision-making process. Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, Baron Probellum stands watch, observing the exit of Count Fonsel and his daughter from the establishment. Upon sighting the Count, Baron Probellum confirms that this is indeed the intended location. Inside, Joshua expresses surprise at Baron Probellum's swift arrival, remarking on it as quicker than expected. As the Baron approaches, he extends greetings to Joshua, expressing his deep honor at meeting the son of the esteemed House of Frederick. At the sight of Probellum, Cain's thoughts turn inward as he assesses the Baron's stature, noting internally that Probellum may hold a lower rank among the Barons, yet possesses capabilities surpassing those of higher-ranking peers. Cain finds himself pondering the significance of Probellum's formal demeanor towards someone of unknown name and humble origins from a rural area. Meanwhile, Probellum, addressing Joshua with a measured tone, introduces himself as Earl Varen's substitute and delivers a message meant for Sir Asher. He underscores the importance of the ring Asher took from Earl Varen, emphasizing its value as a cherished heirloom of the villa's family, and implores Asher to return it to its rightful owner. Joshua, however, stands firm, reminding Probellum of his prior directive to Earl Varen. The Earl must personally reclaim the ring if he desires its return. Furthermore, Joshua asserts that failure to adhere to this condition will result in the ring's destruction. Probellum, taken aback by Joshua's resolve, seeks to explore alternative solutions, indicating a willingness to negotiate further. Joshua expresses his surprise to Probellum about Earl Varen's perceived weakness, indicating a shift in his initial impressions. He instructs Probellum to fetch Moku, the knight who accompanied Earl Varen, before they proceed with their conversation. In addition, Joshua emphasizes that since he's going to such lengths for Probellum's benefit, he expects a reciprocal gesture. Having already fulfilled one of Probellum's requests, Joshua now suggests that Probellum should fulfill one of his in return. Taken aback by Joshua's boldness, Probellum inquires about the nature of the request. Without hesitation, Joshua directs Probalem's attention to the rings adorning his fingers, hinting at their considerable value. With a directness characteristic of his demeanor, Joshua then requests that Probalem hand over those rings to him as a form of compensation. As the scene shifts to the exterior of the restaurant, Cain confronts his liege with a startling accusation, likening Joshua's actions to those of a demon for his seemingly effortless acquisition of Probalem's ring. Cain questions how Joshua could conduct such a transaction with a demeanor devoid of any visible emotion. In response to Cain's skepticism, Joshua calmly refutes the accusation, asserting that the exchange wasn't a result of coercion but rather a fair trade. He argues that it's only reasonable to expect something in return for granting Probalem an opportunity. Perplexed by Joshua's explanation, Cain presses further, seeking clarification on why Joshua coveted Probalem's ring in the first place. Joshua unveils the significance behind the ring, revealing it to be a cherished heirloom of the Orvis family known as the Elf's Tears. He delves into the tragic history of the elves, recounting how their captivating beauty led to their persecution by humans, resulting in immeasurable loss and suffering for the elven race. In a desperate bid to safeguard themselves, the elves united in the forest at the continent's southern tip, establishing a sanctuary known as the Forest of the Elves. To fortify their sanctuary against human intrusion, the High Elves erected a formidable barrier spanning the entirety of the forest, ensuring their safety and seclusion from the outside world. However, even for the High Elves endowed with extraordinary magical talents, maintaining the protective barrier around the expansive forest proved to be a monumental task. Tragically, the strain of upholding the enchantment led to the demise of all the High Elves, leaving just one solitary survivor. This lone survivor became the focal point of reverence for the remaining elves, who hailed him as their monarch, bestowing upon him the name Alunbus, a symbol of their dwindling legacy. As the centuries unfolded, knowledge of the Forest of Elves became shrouded in secrecy, known only to those who held close ties with the fifth-generation Alunbus. However, this individual vanished into obscurity along with his family, leaving behind a void of uncertainty and speculation. The last known patriarch of the Orvis lineage, Zerath Orvis, vanished under mysterious circumstances, prompting rumors of foul play. Joshua entertains suspicions that Zerath may have met a sinister fate, perhaps at the hands of someone seeking to extract information about the Forest of Elves. Despite facing immense pressure and potential threats, Zerath remained resolute in his silence, steadfastly guarding the secret of the forest until his final breath. Even the fifth-generation Queen of Elves, who learned of Zerath's demise belatedly, was powerless to prevent the unfolding tragedy. She emerged onto the continent, driven by the desire to lay eyes on Zerath firsthand. Upon locating the last disciple of Zerath Orvis, who had fallen victim to the machinations of a servant from another noble family, in a scene fraught with emotion, the Queen of Elves wept bitterly as she reached out to offer her apologies, gently grasping the hands of Zerath's final disciple. In that tender exchange, tears flowed freely, their essence intertwining with the sacred family heirloom, later immortalized as the fabled Elf's Tears, eventually gaining fame as the renowned Elf's Tears. However, the tragic news soon spread that the final descendant of the Orvis lineage had succumbed to an illness, leaving behind a legacy tainted by misfortune. Joshua reflects on the cruel twist of fate that befell this family, pondering the mystical power believed to reside within the ring born from such sorrowful circumstances. As they arrive at the mansion, Cain notices Joshua's deep contemplation and queries about his troubled thoughts. Seizing the opportunity, Joshua turns to Cain with a request, stressing its significance not only for himself but also for Cain's own benefit. With sincerity, Joshua confides in Cain, expressing his urgent need for loyal subordinates upon whom he can entrust his safety and well-being. Joshua holds a firm stance against those who falter in battle before him, a sentiment he shares with Cain. With resolve in his voice, Joshua reveals his imminent plans to enroll in the academy. He instructs Cain to depart and join the Duke's retinue, a decision that surprises Cain. Seeking clarification, Cain questions whether Joshua intends for him to serve Lady Lucia's guardian knight. However, Cain expresses reservations about this proposition, foreseeing potential complications for Joshua. Cain articulates his concerns, highlighting the challenges Joshua may face as a noble without an attending knight, particularly given his humble origins and lack of background information. Cain predicts that Joshua might encounter disdain and neglect, situations that align with his temperament but would prove difficult to navigate alone. Thus, Cain emphasizes the importance of his presence to shield Joshua from such adversities, especially considering that Earl Varen, another academy student, will also be in attendance. Cain harbors concerns that Varen may once again target Joshua, a worry he openly shares with Joshua. However, Joshua reassures Cain, expressing his genuine desire for a peaceful existence. Despite Cain's potential skepticism, Joshua asserts his ability to endure solitude with resilience. Nevertheless, Joshua reveals another matter on his mind. With a respectful gesture, Joshua humbly asks Cain to seek training in swordsmanship from the Duke on Joshua's behalf. He emphasizes that this isn't a command as Cain's liege, but rather a sincere request, one that Joshua earnestly hopes Cain will consider. Observing Joshua's display of humility, Cain surmises that Joshua must have sought assistance from Duke Agnes on Cain's behalf. Cain, steadfast in his loyalty, refuses to witness Joshua, the person he serves, bowing to anyone, including himself. While Cain accepts Joshua's request, he raises a valid point about reciprocity. Cain expresses his wish to never bow his head to anyone besides Joshua. Ever gracious, Joshua readily agrees, vowing to ensure that Cain never finds himself in a position of subservience to anyone other than Joshua himself. Affirming this pledge in his own name, Joshua solidifies Cain's trust and allegiance. In a gesture of gratitude, Cain bows in acknowledgement, symbolizing his commitment to placing his well-being under Joshua's care from that moment onward.